Hello everyone, welcome to Movie Recap Channel. Today we are going to see an animation movie recap from 2013 titled Epic. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie is about a young girl called Mary Catherine, alias MK, who discovers a world inhabited by tiny strange creatures in the forest near her scientist father's home. Soon she finds herself pulled into a battle between good creatures called Leafmen, led by Queen Tara, and evil creatures called Boggans, led by Mandrake. It starts in the forest as three crows chase a hummingbird. A man, MK's father, uses a camera installed in the forest to track the chase. He also uses binoculars to view and then runs after the birds. The hummingbird falls down after the assault and he catches and closely inspects it. Later in the forest, evil creatures called Boggans riding on crows chase after a Leafman soldier called Nod. Other Leafmen appear to rescue him, but he declines. A crow grabs him and flies, but when Ronan, the head of the Leafmen, tries to help him, he refuses. Ronan tells him to get back to Moonhaven, their residence, and they leave him. Following this, Mary Catherine travels to his father's home in a taxi. They arrive at her father's house and she alights. She knocks on the door and when no one answers, she moves in with her briefcase. Her father appears but is busily searching through books. He hugs her happily when he notices her, saying she looks exactly like her mother. Their old dog, Uzi, also appears, which MK recognizes as still alive as it runs around playfully. Her father welcomes her to her childhood room. As they talk, one of his alarm sensors rings and he talks of his busy schedule, mentioning a full moon and summer solstice, which coincide only once in 100 years, and leaves her to settle in. She picks up a portrait of her and her mother and reminisces of how she vowed to try hard. MK's father watches with forest cameras. Three Leafmen ride hummingbirds through the forest as they arrive in Moonhaven, a beautiful place where different creatures reside, as the people eagerly watch as the Leafmen fly past them. Ronan, head of the Leafmen, alights and walks to find Queen Tara, the queen of the forest, watching beautiful flowers. He tells her about how the Boggans plan on stopping her from choosing an heir. He asks the queen to send soldiers to grab a pod instead of having the ceremony, since the Boggans are aggressive, but the queen says that she has to be there to feel the pods. Ronan insists that looking after the queen is his duty, and she agrees and says she must choose an heir today, since it is a once-in-100 years moment to protect their future. Mandrake's son, Dagda, heads back to his father, the leader of the Boggans, and jokingly explains of their conflict with the Leafmen. Mandrake asks him whether he found the location of the Leafmen ceremony. He is disgusted that the Leafmen keep the Boggans and their rot land contained and surrounded, all in the name of balance, and that the queen regrows the forest. Mandrake and his son then plan to kill the queen and prevent further life growth, leaving them to rule a desecrated kingdom. Nod later arrives to find Ronan, who sends him to his group, but Nod refuses and leaves riding a bird. The Leafmen carry the queen's barge with hummingbirds as she rides to find a pod. MK's father falls from a tree trying to get a camera. He explains to his daughter that he uses the cameras as an extensive network to monitor the forest. MK says her mom told her his father has a delusional belief of tiny people living in the woods, causing him to lose his career and marriage. Her father, however, says he can prove their existence with sound records. He says they're unseen since they move too fast like insects, living faster in a different dimension. His daughter is unconvinced and wants her dad to stop his work and be normal. Her dad receives an alarm, and as he leaves his daughter mid-conversation to attend his research, his daughter packs and plans to leave. However, Uzi, their dog, runs off into the forest, forcing her to run after him. The queen's convoy arrives at the pods and she alights wearing a white dress and walks on the leaves on water. A flower girl and her mother watch the queen in admiration as she tells her mother of her wish to be a queen in the future. They talk about how the queen will give her powers to a special pod so the life of the forest continues. The queen finds two pod guardians, a slug named Mub and a wannabe leafman snail named Grub, and asks them to help her choose a pod. They choose one for her, but she surprisingly refuses and chooses a smaller one. Ronan notices a flower rotting, indicating an attack from the Boggans. They reveal themselves and Ronan asks the queen to get to her barge. The Leafmen fight the Boggans as they attack the Queen's barge. The Queen runs with the pod in her hand, chased by the Boggans. The Leafmen try to help her, but are overwhelmed by their sheer numbers. Mandrake and his son plan on taking the pod and the Queen. The Boggans continue to chase the Queen, and she leaves the flower girl with Ronan. She leads the Boggans away and later is helped onto a hummingbird by Ronan. They escape but are chased by Boggans. Ronan shoots an arrow through Mandrake's son, Dagda, but the Queen is also shot in the combat. The weather turns dark as she falls down from the sky. As MK wanders in the forest, the Queen falls by her side and releases a magical light from the pod, which MK catches. The magic whirls her around and she lands as a tiny person, finding the Queen injured. The Queen charges her to take the pod to Nim Galu, the scroll keeper. She dies in Ronan's hands as her sparks ascend to the sky. Ronan charges the Leafmen to fortify the pod from Mandrake and the Boggans. MK is amazed by the forest creatures and realizes she is now tiny. Later, they advance with Ronan, the head of the Leafmen, and the two podkeeper slugs to find Nim as charged by the Queen. Ronan finds Nod under threat from a frog after he failed their agreement and rescues him, informing him of the Queen's death. He offers to go with them to Nim Galu. MK's father comes back from the forest followed by Uzi. MK and Nod approach the rotted forest. Nod tries to move through, but hundreds of Boggans appear, forcing them to escape through other tunnels with the help of Ronan. Mandrake asks the frog to tell him where Ronan and Co. are taking the pod. Ronan and company arrive at Nim Galu's place, the wise old man of the forest. They find others seeking answers from Nim regarding the Queen. Nim then appears in a dance and explains to the people the contents of his scrolls. Afraid of telling people of the Queen's death, he runs off but bumps into Ronan. MK presents the Queen's pod to Nim and he takes them to research it. They arrive at the Rings of Knowledge, a place where all happenings are recorded in scrolls. Rim reads one scroll which states that the pod is to bloom at night in the light of the full moon at its highest peak. MK tells Nim that she is not from this world, and Nim offers her a scroll. She blows its dust and visual images of the Queen appear. She asks her to make her human, but the Queen tells MK that the pod needs her and is there for a reason. She tells her to be there when the pod blooms and she will get back what she has given. Nim tells the people that the Queen is gone, but comforts them that when the pod blooms, a new Queen will rise. Ronan also tasks Nod to take care of the pod. Later, Nod takes MK on an adventure where they ride a giant deer. Nim and Ronan send a message to the Leafmen that they are bringing home the pod. However, Mandrake disrupts the party and steals the pod and both the pod keepers. Ronan and his company plan to disguise and sneak into the Boggan's place, and MK takes them to find Boggan armor at his father's place. Mandrake explains that he wishes to bloom the pod in darkness to gain power and to bring back his son as the Darkness Prince, to destroy the forest as is recorded in the remaining part of the scrolls. MK takes the Leafmen to her house, and they begin to search for her father's Boggan armor. They watch MK's dad as Ronan and Nod recognize him as the man obsessed with finding them. However, MK reveals that the man is her father. MK sees her father sad over her disappearance and approaches him. However, the dog begins to chase her around and her father notices. He uses his binoculars to see the three of them running and uses a vacuum pipe to blow in and capture MK. Realizing it's her daughter, he faints and drops to the floor, leading them to escape. They wear disguises and sneak into the evil forest with other Boggans to find where Mandrake holds the slugs and the pod. They move through a cave of bats and Ronan shows them the exit and takes off his disguise. The Boggans chase him as Nod and MK find Mub and Grub. They pull the slugs out of their hole, but the guards notice them escaping and chase them. As Ronan is running, he runs into Mandrake and they begin to fight. Mandrake notices the others escaping with the pod and summons an army of Boggans after them. Ronan remains to fight the overwhelming forces as the others escape. They fly back to reunite with the Leafmen and explain that Ronan was captured. Together they head back to find Nim Galu, who happily welcomes them. They march toward the arena for the blooming ceremony and Nim places the pod on the altar, where the moonlight reaches. Ron and MK begin to say farewell as the moonlight lights up the pod. However, the process is disrupted by Mandrake's bats, which block the moonlight. The pod grows darker and the elfmen move in unison to engage the large swarm of bats. MK then decides to ask for her father's help. MK appears in front of her father's cameras, but her father fails to notice her since he plans to quit everything. She sees Uzi and it leads her father marching toward her and to see MK. With the help of his gadgets to communicate, she asks him to help them. The Leafmen fight with Mandrake's forces and he moves in to capture Nim. Mandrake then heads to the blooming pod, but is stopped by Ronan and they fight again. MK plays the sounds on his father's sound gadget, which disrupts the bats, causing them to scatter from the moonlight. Nod and other Leafmen appear and save Ronan from Mandrake. The bats clear and the moonlight shines and the pod begins to bloom in light. The Leafmen kick out Mandrake into the rot. Later, after the pod blooms, there is a light blast, and as drops of rain fall, plants and flowers regain their vitality. As sparks of light float from the pod, the queen appears and appoints the flower girl, who is always her admirer, to take care of the forest as she is the next queen. They all bow to their new queen, but MK notices she is still tiny, saying she missed her chance. The new queen then uses her power and turns MK back to a human. Nod hugs and kisses MK as she turns and she later floats away. As her father is heading back home looking at a picture of his family, MK appears and they both hugged each other. Back at the house, MK and her father draw pictures of the Leafmen as Uzi plays around the house. She answers a call from Nod, who is over the forest cameras as he and Mub jokingly argue over their affairs with MK. MK, her father, and their dog, Uzi, joyfully head out to the forest to talk with their Leafmen friends, which brings an end to the fascinating movie. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing to our channel. I'll be back with another interesting movie. Until then, take care.